It's a gloomy May afternoon, also known as early June gloom, as Anne-Marie just brought up. Let's see here. Get off this, turn some literature up. Got it. Alrighty. All right, well, welcome everyone watching on YouTube. This is Literature Afternoon at my place cafe. Since my place is still open during this live stream, stop by and get a spring latte, drip, or cold brew. All right, let me find where I have my stuff here. Here we are. Above my place cafe is the Zen Den, a yoga studio run by Jody Smith. Learn more about these and other yoga sessions, including purchase some Magic Melanin Mama products, which she's also the founder of at thezendenla.com. I was telling Eddie Ramos, who's currently doing a marketing seminar upstairs at the moment, and about Magic Melanin Mama, because two of her featured products were actually laid right there on the floor, which was like an oil that you spray and like a mist, and a scented wooden essence to get you light up. So for today, I am being intentional by not referring to today as afternoon poetry reading, because this afternoon's featured poets are more than just poets. For instance, Anne-Marie Wells is an editor, a playwright, a writing consultant, and all-around awesome person. We have interacted in the digital world, but not in the real world. Hello. I had the pleasure of meeting their partner, Alex Hart, when I couriered advanced reader copies for Wells. Brenda Vaca is the founder of Riot of Roses Publishing House from Whittier, California. I'm hoping I can get published by her someday. I won't get carried away with that at the moment. Because of Riot of Roses Publishing, Vaca is also an editor, publisher, and writing consultant. I met Vaca at Sims Poetry Library for their fall book fair. That's also where I met Jessica Villegas, Juan Cardenas, Jean-Pierre Reda, Tongo Eisen Martin, and so many others. Last month, we met at Uptown Whittier so I can buy her book, Riot of Roses, and then I decided to ask her about selling limited time copies at the cafe. I am glad Vaca agreed, and as of like 2 weeks ago, all the copies have sold out. Rafael Agustin, who has written for shows like Jane the Virgin, was one of the customers that bought Brenda's book. All right, so yeah. By the way, Rafael Agustin is coming out with a memoir titled Illegally Yours on July 12th, published by Grand Central Publishing. So if you get a chance between now and July, pre-order your copy today. I pre-ordered mine. All right, so a moment ago, I mentioned that Anne-Marie and I interacted in the digital world. Did anybody get my Digimon reference? Well, anyways, she also participated in Sims Poetry Library workshops in the digital world, AKA Community Literature Initiative, or CLI, poetry workshops led by my friends Andrew Liu and Olga Murillo. To those who regularly tune in to the cafe's YouTube channel, you should have seen or skimmed Liu's and Murillo's author readings. Recently, hey, how are you? Recently, I found out that both Vaca and Wells were in the same cohort for CLI Saturday Church. Part of that is also Tommy Domino, Ravina Wadwani, Carl Scott, and much more. Again, Scott read back to us and read in March to us. She will return next month for a Spectrum Publishing Features event at the cafe. Vaca refers to the Yosa X as her poetry midwife in her acknowledgement section of Riot of Roses. Vaca also gives a shout out to the amazing Sandra Sanchez from Sims Poetry Library. Sanchez served as her proofreader. Andrew Liu has shown me that even the best editors and proofreaders need their own editors and proofreaders, aka a second, third, fourth, or fifth set of eyes. I get that sometimes you may feel you need no one, but books are not produced in isolation. So for Riot of Roses preface, Vaca shared that Tommy Domino thought Vaca was writing about freedom, liberation, and breaking chains. Vaca also shared that Ravina thought Vaca was writing about the process of merging and transmuting. I looked up transmute, a lot simpler than I thought it was upon first glance. I really appreciated the footnotes in Riot of Roses because in Bolsa Chicana, I learned in footnote number 4 that pendejadas means dumb shit. Last month, I decided to name drop local authors I personally know at a Glendale College event where I was a keynote speaker on spilling tea on life as an English major. During my off the cuff speech, I summarized the other woman. Footnote 17 says, por toda la fregada, which is, and every fucking thing. No adequate English translation. Vete a la fregada, for example, means go fuck yourself. Once again, what I enjoy about those footnotes is that I am finally given insight on Spanish vulgarities purposely translated vaguely by my family, so I don't know what they mean in English. So I guess this is long enough for now. So this afternoon, Latonya Smith, Jody Smith, and I welcome Brenda Baca.
Hey everyone. Hey Anne-Marie, good to see your beautiful face and the beautiful waves of water behind you. I am. My book is for sale right over here. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. We could talk about it after, yeah? I'm gonna do some reading, so if you'd like to hear some poetry. All right. Peace. No worries. So, gonna do my best to read some poetry.
I don't know what I'll give a goddamn. I think it was you.
We're gonna take a moment to pause.
Okay, right. And I think what it was you. What that mean?
All right, let's hear some poetry, shall we? Life IRL is can be intense. So I'll share a poem for my book, Riot of Roses. I self-published this book in, what year was that? 2021. It was just 6 months ago, going on 6 months now, early December, and I self-published. I actually set up my own little indie publishing house. So yeah, I was absolutely thrilled to have this in my hand. As Jesse mentioned, I'm an alum of CLI. I was part of the Saturday Church family with the wonderful Anne-Marie Wells, who you see here on screen with you. And we just had a really, I think, meaningful and sacred time doing poetry, workshopping, sharing, you know, and it's been a blessing. Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah, awesome. The first poem I'm gonna read is it's a shorty poem. I write longer pieces, but I've been working on memorization, so I'm gonna do my best to read this one or share this one from memory. It's called The Unearthing. The unearthing is painful, the unearthing is deep. The unearthing is harder than you think. Over time, I had sunk. At first, a defense mechanism to keep me safe, or seemingly so, but then it became my greatest woe, to hide, to shrink, to dream big, and then do nothing. But I am something, and I am someone. There is a rising sun in me, my own diosa shakes awake, flutters her wings, then throws down her stake. She says, this is your life to live. You cannot just keep wandering. It's time to come clean. It's time to unearth this poetic dream. Poem. Thank you so much. So May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And like everyone, you know, I struggle with mental health, and people in my family for sure struggle. We struggle with mental health. But loving each other, supporting each other is what keeps us alive and keeps us resilient. So I wrote this poem for my Aunt B, who is no longer with us. And it's called Aunt B. This is a poem for my tia Beatriz, Aunt B. Everyone called her B. Beatrice when feeling formal or proud. B, one of my mother's oldest sisters. She turned crazy when she was about 18 or 19 years old, schizophrenia. She came back from Mexico and she wasn't the same. Endemoniada, they called it. They called in the brothers, the elders from the church, to lay hands on her and pray the demon out. It did not work. What my mother heard on the other side of the door were screams and wails. What were they doing to her in there? Because of the shit we see in this world, I am scared and sad about the things she endured. Experimental drug treatments, electroshock therapy, incarceration and isolation from her family, though they didn't miss a weekend visit to San Bernardino. No one understood the plane she was on. When your heart breaks so hard, it seems impossible to come back. We all grieve. We all have moments when we fall to our knees and go a little nuts. Some of us have a more sustained dance with mental illness. We have a nervous breakdown. Well, B, she had a lot of episodes, one too many nervous breakdowns, and she lost her damn mind. That is what they say. Then they sent her away. They did not feel that they could be safe or keep her safe. They worried when they couldn't control her. Pórtate como una mujer decente, defiant, runaway lost in Islos with her family in Watts. When I was a child, there were times that they'd go and search for her. Then they bolted the doors because she was a flight risk. One of my earliest memories is of her running away. It was the early 80s, and Ronald Reagan was the president who showed no love for those struggling with their mental health. He even took a bullet from John Hinckley, a young schizophrenic man, 2 months after taking office. My Aunt B had been impacted years earlier by California's deinstitutionalization movement from its state hospitals. She disappeared one day from my abuelita's house in Montebello. My tío Miguel, my father's brother, found her crossing the railroad tracks in Watts. An inkling my mother had, go to these places, go to this corner. This is where we used to live. And it was the best instinct, the right vision. ¿Me vas a cumplir? She asked him as she got in the car. You know, no matter how far we wander, no matter how far gone we are in our minds, in our heartbreak and in our grief, the holy, that which is sacred, love, source, light, darkness, whatever you want to call it, finds us, protects us, holds us, loves us, provides for us. It's sad the depths to which we all can sink. It's also powerful how, despite the murkiness of our depths, we can be brought to life again. Something in creation comes to our aid, and somehow we survive. And even for the ones that didn't survive, I know it's hard to talk about them. I have come to trust that even at the end, at the last breath, even at their own hand, or by the consequences of tendencies decades old, I trust that light, the sacred source, God, creator, the holy, I trust that they are there to hold us, just as my Aunt B was held so many times. My Aunt B made it well into her 80s, agile and walking almost until her end. That is how I want to go, with angels at every level. Even though we know there are devils, I pray for the angels. The presence of those encamped around her bedside, the ones who whispered, cooed, encouraged, and midwifed her to the other side. I have been in those death rooms. I have been, to the best of my ability, a gentle spirit holding hands, crying, hugging, praying, pushing, birthing, praising, giving thanks, yielding, submitting, letting go, hugging, laughing, crying, singing alleluia at those bedsides. Nothing dims that sacred moment when we cross over to the other side of the veil and take our very first breaths. Poem. Thank you. We're gonna relocate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My apologies there, YouTube. Long story. All righty, wasn't that first poem great by Brenda? What do you think? Yeah.
We're relocating.
Yeah.
Hey again, everyone. Thank you for your patience as we migrate a little bit to inside the cafe for reasons we can disclose later. I'll go ahead and move right along. trying to determine to read one of my most vulnerable pieces, but I don't know if this is the right space for it right now, to be honest. But I do want to I'll read another one that's maybe a shout out as well. And it speaks, there's been so much in the news about Roe v. Wade, as we all know. And I have several poems dedicated to that issue, and I write from personal experience. I'm not going to read the most difficult one, but I will read one that I wrote when I was 22 years old. It's called Heart Murmur. This is actually the first time I'm reading it out loud in public, but I think it will shed light on the complexities of this issue, how it's not just a black or white issue, that there are human beings with wombs that are caught in the middle of this issue. And for many, it's not very easy. This is called Heart Murmur, and it's a grieving poem. I have lived this mundane life before. I have crossed this path in dreams where footsteps fell upon hollow ground and nothing was quite real. My soul longs to be transported back to a dream where a baby smiles back at this woe-begotten girl beneath layers and layers of shame. Let me love you but a while. Let me slip my hands around your body and make my arms your swaddling cloth. Let me brush kisses against your baby skin and hear that baby breath in my nightly wanderings, making me all that I wanted in you. Help me to find peace in this stubborn part of night that leaves me an insomniac, dry of mouth and dry of eye. My heart misses a beat every time I think of you to make up for every beat that you will never feel. Finally, I miss you. Finally, I make it about you. Finally, I live in a world nocturnal and sleepless where the only dreams I dream are dreams of you. My faint heart murmurs, then flows with the memory of yours gone. Within this dream, I shall name you my queen, my very flesh and blood. Poem. Thank you. So I'll move forward. Let me see, how are we done on time?
You have like another.
Okay, great. We got a lot of time together, folks. I'm gonna move into section 2 of my book, Riot of Roses, if you're just tuning in. This is a poem that I really enjoy reading. I read it quite a bit at different open mics. It's a poem in celebration of friendship, and it's also a poem about the expansion of spirituality. Full disclosure, I used to be a pastor with the United Methodist Church for a decade of my life. And I grew up in a very, I don't want to say rigid household, Christian household, but it definitely had parameters around it. But I'm a bit of the rebel in my family. So I was always pushing the envelope.
It's funny you mentioned that, like my family wasn't rigid, but the church I went to growing up was rigid. Yeah.
I think that's a great way to put it. The church I went to growing up was very rigid. It was actually a white evangelical church. So I got a lot of feelings. There was great people there. There was lots of love, and there was a lot of rigidity. Great way to put it, Jesse. So this one is called Spirit Guides, and it's definitely about, again, friendship and pushing the envelope, expanding understanding of spirit. Spirit Guides. My friend Xochitl and I have always talked about things of the spirit. As young mujeres, we'd be cracking codes for play, smoking a bong in her closet. This had become our ritual, invoking the womb of our mothers, hot box simulating a lodge in the desert, and discovered you can start a fire using water. We dove down deep into childhood reverie. Xochitl taught me how to get down to Tonantzin. Without a loving, trusted beloved, you can't go see what is unseen. Then our trips to the beach, where we learned to find spirit in the sky, circling above, immediately called them spirit guides. It was right, and it was holy, from day to night. Lord, 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 what are these sights I behold? Facing east, south, west, and north, I reconnect with my grandmothers, the ones I never knew in this life, when Xochitl calls the corners. A door was opened, and eye to eye, a jungle was I. I felt the great I am running through these veins. I am of the earth, and I am of the sky. Oh my, oh my. How many times did I die? How many times did spirit bring me, breathe me, stretch me, pull me, free me back to life? My, oh my, these feet can touch the sky. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. It's my niece's birthday yesterday, my youngest niece. She turned 8. So I do have a poem for my nieces. I have 4 nieces, 3 from my sister, 1 from my brother, and 2 nephews. I don't have children of my own. They are my children, the extension and the abundance of my family. But I wrote this poem with my youngest niece, with my oldest nieces in mind when they were little, but I expanded it as I was working on my book to include my newest niece, who's now 8, and I can't believe it. Time flies. Flowers from nieces. Flowers from nieces are always sweetest when they inch over to the neighbor's garden and pick them on the sly. One by one, tender with their fingertips, they pluck and slip back in bounding footsteps before their mama can catch them. When they were children, every time I left their house, they made sure I was well taken care of, tended to, loved on for the week. This trinity of nieces, 4 of them now, like a sweet Sunday sermon, summoned the undefiled beauty of the world so that I didn't have to walk alone. Did they know the life I chose to lead and that I made a home of my own? Even in their smallness, did they understand? The nights of study with my face in books and the Bible, the Sundays at church and not at home with them, what I thought it took to walk through this world with the freedom of birds who carry their comfort as wings tucked safe near their bodies. The concept of home is turned on its head, revised, rewritten, maybe left for dead, because home is not always living in the first place. What is it then? What is it about home that makes me want to visit far off places in jumbo jets? What is this notion of home that is given even to us as babies in our beds to believe that we are like turtles that can never leave our shells, never poke our nose out of the nest, or venture into places where sea swells unpredictably? Yes, garden lines have to be crossed at 9, 5, 3, 27, 44, flower beds trampled in our play to make sure that all those we love are well taken care of, tended to, loved on. We are not like flowers landscaped and rooted to soil with name tags on us, or those exiled to vases in fancy houses. No, we are the ones who find our way on the wind and grow in the wild without a place to lay our head, the living, the undead. I will read a couple of poems from section 3 of my book, which is like the love poem heartbreak section of Riot of Roses. And I will start with the shortest piece, one of the shortest pieces. Swipe right, left, 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 right, left. That one always gets some smiles when I read it. I'll see you on the other side. To get swallowed by the bed and blankets and sink into pillows so soft and welcoming, like your body. Something akin to home, something akin to making me stop roaming. Oh, how I miss the throes of love, the way I am in love, the full force gale, the warm cobija, the one who gives and gives and gives and doesn't ask for much in return. Except wait, I do have needs. Me in love was nothing more than me wearing a suit that never quite fit, stretching and pulling at the blazer over these lonjas. They say relationships are compromised, but you cannot tailor make a person. You cannot cut or let out or de-seam or re-sew a human, but to be stitched together with kisses, to feel safe enough to unravel. Pull out a thimble and slip your thread like a bullseye into the eye of a needle. Love is safety, safe enough to survive this crazy chaos of a planet together, safe enough to die, to take that last breath and say, I'll see you on the other side. Poem. And I'll read the next shortest poem in this section. Swipe left. Right, 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 left, right. And I'll show it to you because it's a form poem. I was just beginning to play with form. There was folks in my class. I think you had one, Anne Marie, that was in a shape. And these two poems came out of after we had that class with CLI, our Sunday church class with Tommy Domino and Ravina Wadwani. Anne Marie had written a poem in a shape, and others were commenting about shapes after that. And I was like, let me play with some shapes and play with minimalism, because as you can tell, I'm a wordy poet. Thank you. Thank you so much. Let's see. Ooh, what can us? Oh yeah, thank you so much. Jesse's a generous host, just gave me something wrapped up. I'm not sure what it is. I'll find out. I'll find out later. I'll read another lovey heartbreak poem, and then we'll move on to the my last section, which is definitely, I think, my favorite section because it's like the empowerment section. Ears to hear. I love you. I finally heard the words I longed for ears to hear. I love you. For each year we had been together, you finally resigned to the fact it was me you loved, me who changed your life. At least that's what you said. I love you. Like Peter erasing a wrong, you had said it once before in my bedroom in San Jose, in a tiny cottage, the one that birthed our story and the same one that witnessed our annihilation. I love you, you said shyly, timidly, not able to hold eye contact. And as soon as I was gone, you were with her again and again, making me believe what I had always feared, the ferocious whisper, you are not enough. I remember whispering in your ear as we pressed in love against a wall near Pahoa on the Big Island. A heavily vegetated rainforest teeming with life around us. I love you, I sang with the Koki frogs. Stars in the sky sparkled their magic by the millions. Words I longed for ears to hear. How many times did I pray? How many years shed? How many poems written? How many circles walked, miles driven, ice creams eaten? How many owls hooted their warning? How many stars in the sky that night? How many glistening so close we could touch them? Thank you. Poem. I love saying that after poems now. I was at an open mic and someone read that, and every now and then, like, there's pauses in poetry when we're reading, and you don't always know when the poet is done with the poem. So I love that little bow when someone says poem, you know, like done, like a little stamp. And speaking of little stamps, I'm gonna show, I think Anne Marie and I had the same layout queen, Crystal May Statler, who's now full-time staff with CLI, and I think by extension, World Stage Press. But it was Crystal's idea when she was laying out my book to add a little dot at the end of each poem to wrap it up neatly. And it's a shout out. I was telling Jesse earlier, and was it GT?
Yeah, GT Foster.
Yeah, GT Foster. It's a shout out to Lucille Clifton. So I'll show it to you on the page. If you can see the tiny little dot at the end, it's like the centered period. And I love that. I was like, yes, please, let's show some love for Lucille. So thank you, Crystal May Statler, if you're listening out there. in Oregon. Let's see. I'll read this one. I haven't read this one in a long time. This was one of the first poems I read at an open mic online with Los Angeles Poet Society Press. So much love to LA Society Press. Millennial Amor, Jessica Villegas was the person that was hosting the event. I think it was on Instagram. It was like an IG live, and it was the first time in like 2 decades that I had read poetry out loud. And this was in pandemic. So again, much love to LA Poet Society, Millennial Amor, and Estela Cordero for the invitation. Yeah, you know, yeah, she's incredible. Lots of incredible poets in the community right now. And I understand she has a book coming out soon, so she's putting one together. This one is called Poem for the Fat Feminist Who Gave Me Back My Body. You gave me back my thighs, those hips, the ones that never lie, that move to the right and to the left. Don't matter which way I try to move them, they have a mind of their own, jiggle and roll. You gave me back my breasts, the ones I always tried to hide, the ones that made me want to crawl inside this chest. Boobs that sag so soon when truth is, they always started low, singing, swing low, sweet chariots, coming for to carry me home. My long COVID's getting to me. Swing low, I think I started too low. Sweet chariots, coming for to carry me. As soon as I come home, this bra comes off. Wires that dig into my sides, the ones that try their damnedest to hike these up to my chin, chinny chin chins, the same breasts I was told to hide, cover up, don't let them see your headlights, tapate la pechuga, mommy encourages. And when I became clergy, was todavía más. I had to buy a thicker, heavier robe. God forbid that anyone get offended when I'm trying to preach. God forbid that anyone see my headlights when I'm trying to preach the good news. God forbid, heaven forbid, anyone see the body I'm in, the same one Creator gave me, made from the earth, Adama, earthling, Eva, Tonantzin, Pachamama, my DNA, the one my mothers gave me. You gave me back my arms, the one society tells me wear long sleeves. It can be 100 degrees out and I'm supposed to wear a sweatshirt. No, that's not for me, not anymore. These are my limbs and I am the tree. Fat girl, you gave me back my nostrils, the ones that there was no way I could hide. Breathe through your mouth or breathe through your nostrils. Like my mama, I didn't want to be the kind of fat woman that you hear coming from down the hall, the one that announces her entrance, snorting her arrival, sweat beating our brows, the kind of woman that sounds like she's about to have a heart attack. Oh, but I have been this woman. So I couldn't hide these nostrils, these wide, nosy nostrils. There was this one time at Samaranos in East Oakland when I was devouring a carne asada burrito con todo with Wendy and another one of her friends from high school. We laughed so hard after taking a bite of a tasty and crisp green cebollita. We laughed so hard that green onion literally flew out my nose through these nostrils. I give me back my nostrils. This nose that is too wide by society's standards, but the one that is just right for me, the one that goes on my face. I'm not a mistake. Oh, I am on purpose, a thing of beauty, an amazing thing. My kin, they have the same nose, same skin, same nostrils. Fat girl, poeta, goddess, indígena, diosa, Coatlicue, you gave me back my body. It runs deep, your blood through these veins. No amount of hate, no amount of maiming, no amount of rape could water down this DNA. It is evident on my skin. Touch these scars, Cristo said. This is proof that I am me. These scars, this struggle are what led me to this faith. My laughter has been key. The smile on me, the smile on my face for the whole human race, and no construction of race or gender can dismember this body. No construction of ethnicity is going to keep me from being me and all I was made to be. You gave me back my body. For that, I am grateful. May it be so. As in heaven, so below. Poem. I love seeing Anne Marie's facial expressions while I'm reading. I forgot how I've been doing a lot of live events like IRL in real life, and I forgot about like the fun Zoom and like YouTube and the screen. It's great because it's like you can't hear people, but you can see them, and that speaks volumes. How are we on time, Jesse? It was a long one.
You only got like 3 minutes?
3 minutes. Let's find a shorty. I'll read you the title piece to my book to end, which is called Riot of Roses. A lot of people ask me why I call this book Riot of Roses. This is where it comes from, this particular poem. Much of what I write is about grief and heartbreak, but it's also about transmutation, the transformation, right? The change, the recovery from difficulty to beauty. I'll wait for the sound to change a little. There we go. Riot of Roses. Like the blooming of roses, we riot to life. It is sunset. The sun rides low on the horizon, so low we can't see it. New moon, 3 days old, chases him, and Venus's rides high, witnessing all of it. Birds tucked into the safety of trees chatter. It must be story time just before bed, and the energy of the young ones shakes the leaves on the branches. Barking dog in the distance declares, I am here. The moon insists in her persistent cycle, the way she comes and the way she goes, the way she grows heavy in her belly, and the way she surrenders to her waning. She is always whole in her fragmentation, even if she cannot be seen. The time for withering is over. This is the birth of a sunflower. This is the origin of the wind. A new life is waiting, knocking at our door, comes in dramatic like birth pangs. There is no way we can deny it or postpone it. The mothers understand, the daddies know, control as we might the outcome. Life is most unpredictable, like a riot of roses, vibrating color, fantastic. One day furled up tight in a bud, the next day bursting open at the rising sun. We bloom to life when Kairos arrives, beckoning, wake up, wake up, wake up. Thank you so much, everyone. It's been a pleasure. I am Brenda Vaca, writer of Riot of Roses. Stay tuned for more wonderful poetry.
So before we get to more poetry, I'm gonna go check on the espresso machine. All right.
Yeah. A nice little intermission.
I can talk over that. That's fine. I can totally talk over that because anyways, if they still need to use it more and more, I can always mute our side on the Zoom. That's why I love doing Zoom and YouTube together. Yeah. Alrighty, so I am so thankful Anne-Marie Wells gave me the privilege to read Survive By. I decided to play Black Eyed Peas, Meet Me Halfway, after reading Anne-Marie Wells's Halfway. Reading this poem brought me back to centuries-old Brit and American poetry where the typology of some poems resembled shapes. Halfway is definitely one of those, if I make sense. At ETA Ursae Majors is also another one of those poems. 12 Days Later is what I would call a micro essay. For those who read poetry, you'll sometimes see one, then the stanza, two, then the stanza. Here, the numbering to indicate stanzas is reconfigured in sentences like, now I have come to step 8, or step 1, tell everyone to fuck off. When I read 1120, this is what Don Kingfisher Campbell would call a rectangular poem. I call them prose poems, which are my favorite type of poems to write. What's also cool about this piece on the page is how it instructs a reader to variate how to read. There wasn't time. I think about variation in poetic performance because I neglected that in my mind until Tongo Eisen Martin mentioned that during his appearance for Spectrum Publishing's The Big Practice last month. On the page for No Unknowing, I love that the title of the piece is on the bottom. It can be read as the last line. Everyone, please welcome Anne-Marie Wells.
Thank you so much, Jesse. Yes, so I was in the Community Literature Initiative Poetry Publishing Program with my classmate Brenda Vaca. And my collection, Survivi, has somewhat evolved from my time at CLI. So it's now what I consider a memoir in verse. When I first started writing my collection, it was essentially a way for me to move forward through my father's illness. He was diagnosed with stage 4 terminal lung cancer in September of 2019. And I immediately uprooted my life in Wyoming and went to Florida to be with him. And the thing that kept me going and kept me strong through it was writing poetry. And this collection is the fruit of that labor. So the first piece that I'm going to read to you is what I call the first part of the memoir in verse. So it's poetry, but it reads like a memoir, and it's called September. Where is the how-to guide for tragedy? How do people learn what to do when their father has stage 4 lung cancer? What are the steps? Perhaps step 1, stop breathing as electric burning emanates outward from your sternum. Step 2, feel as if seashells have been placed over your ears. Step 3, tremble like a rescue dog on the 4th of July. If you've made it to step 3, good job. You're doing great. This is your life now. The night my mom calls to tell me the news, I have plans to go on a Tinder date with a guy who is totally fine. We are supposed to go to my friend's art gallery opening, but I haven't actually gotten confirmation from him that he is going. Even though I'm still on the phone with my mom, I send him a text, which I still find generous. Hey, I don't know if we're going to the opening or not, but hey, I don't know if you were planning on going to the opening or not, but I'm not going to make it. I just found out my dad has terminal lung cancer, and just to be transparent, I was already totally dead on the inside. Now I'm even deader, which I didn't think was possible. Anyway, I don't have the capacity to make out with someone on a regular basis right now. Take care. He calls me. I hate when people call me, but he's only known me for 2, maybe 3 weeks. So there's no way for him to know I hate being called or for him to know anything about me, really. I decline the call. He leaves a voicemail. I hate when people leave voicemails. My voicemail message specifically says, please hang up and send me an email or a text. Before I hang up with my mom, I try to ask her what I should do, but the words won't come out through my wails. Honey, I can't understand you. Say it again. My mom sounds as if this is a normal conversation about my work or the dogs or the latest hurricane broncoing toward the East Coast. Should I come home? I say louder, taking my time to cradle each word in my mouth. Sure, you can come home whenever you want. Her tone still sounds like she is responding to, hey, I have nothing better to do. Would it be okay if I come home for a visit? And not, should I come home to be with dad before he dies? No, frustration barrels out from the pit in my stomach. She isn't understanding me or is pretending not to. Should I come home to be with you guys? If it's going to be 6 months, I'll quit my job, sell my things, leave Wyoming. I'll come out there and be with you. But if it's going to be 5 years, honey, Mom interrupts and I hear the strain in the clench of her molars. It's not going to be 5 years, honey. I can't breathe, burning chest, seashell ears. I have a new life I never expected to have. As naive as that sounds, everyone loses their parents or their parents lose them first. Everyone experiences loss. But not me. I'm not supposed to. No one close to me is ever supposed to die. No one ever has. I've never been through this. I don't know the steps. I listen to Tinder Guy's voicemail after I say goodbye to my mom. Hi, Anne-Marie. Yeah, long day. I'm sorry to hear about your father. That's obviously shitty. So I'm not sure how you're feeling in general. I got your text. Yeah, whatever, no worries, but give me a call when you have a few. I'd like to talk. Take care. I hate him. I send another text. I still regret it. Hey, you are nice and funny and handsome, and I mean this as nicely as I can. Please go away. He responds with a question mark. You're going to have to rephrase that. Sorry, Tinder guy, I don't have to do shit right now. I blocked his number. He is a perfectly fine person, and I'm sure he only wants me to be kinder to him, but I am incapable of kindness at the moment. I am dead, and I cannot give a fuck about his feelings. I text Bert. Bert's real name is Robert, but I call him Bert. I'm the only one allowed to call him Bert, and he doesn't even like it when I do, but I do it anyway because I like it, and I'm a self-absorbed idiot. Bert and I used to date, and he is not self-absorbed. He is not an idiot. He is a wonderful human being, even though it didn't work out between us romantically. Mostly because, like I said, I am a self-absorbed idiot. Would you want to come hang out with me while I sob? He has no reason to say yes, but I have nothing to lose, not even shame. I'll be there in a minute. Maybe I'll elope with him in a hot air balloon one day. I'm lying in my bed with Bert, watching Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire and hating existence, hating everyone, hating even Bert. Bert deserves someone who can love him back and doesn't deserve to be hated just for living and for breathing without any effort, especially when I asked him specifically if he would breathe next to me. The louder, the better. He even brought my favorite snacks, nothing that requires cooking. He knows how I hate cooking. How could I be so full of rage toward this gentle man who has done nothing, not even unintentionally to hurt me? I'm waiting for my Advil PM to kick in and watching Voldemort kill Diggory despite being dead on the inside and despite my illogical temporary hatred of Bert. I'm grateful. I'm not alone. I'm grateful. Bert either cares about me, even though I'm a total nightmare, or he is also so lonely. Or maybe both. Two things can be true at the same time, after all. I'm realizing right now I can be grateful to not be alone and to have Bert breathing next to me at the same time as being full of anger and resentment toward every human being on the planet, including him. Perhaps then the steps are: step 1, skip denial, go straight to the anger stage of grief. Step 2, not just anger, but fury, rage, wrath. Step 3, become paralyzed with bitterness. The next day, Sadie shows up at my house unannounced. I thought I hated when people turned up at my house unannounced, but it turns out I don't hate it when it's Sadie. She's nearly a decade younger than I am, but full of the kind of wisdom that sits in the mind of a person 4 times her age. Wisdom that often goes ignored because she wears floral summer dresses, because she's a barista. She has a bag of ready-to-eat groceries with her because, like Bert, she knows I hate cooking. I took a picture of a spider living in a web on my stovetop the other day when I still found comedy in existence. Last year, Sadie lost her brother, her best friend, her person. When it happened, I read all of her blog posts chronicling her grief. I read articles and watched videos about how to care for someone living through loss. Was I studying for a test I didn't know I was going to take? Last year, I bought her family ready-to-eat meals from the supermarket. A year later, she's bringing me frozen pizza, toaster waffles, and ingredients for smoothies. Sadie and I talk and cry. She tells me of her journey to rebuild her bones after her entire world collapsed. And I decide in that moment, the only people I want to talk to are those who have had their core hollowed out by loss. I call my mom after Sadie leaves to hear what the update is and if my dad has left the hospital yet. My dad answers. Each word is a whisper with a gasp of air behind it to give the word enough force to exit his mouth. Hello? His voice, small like a votive's light, has the same sing-songy intonation it has always had. Hi, Daddy. My knees shatter beneath my weight and I slide to the floor. How you doing? He asks, if it were any other day, any other life, as if he weren't wrestling for air between each syllable. I'm awful. My words garble, my face contorts a gargoyle, channeling tears away from my chin. I'm awful. I mouth it again, inarticulate. I want to shout it louder, more violently. Did you hear me? I'm awful, awful. But only the moans of a terrified daughter resound. It's not that bad, he says through wheezes. It's not that bad. What the fuck is he talking about? It's not that bad. This isn't sad. I'm old. I've had a good life. My dad is almost 75. He smoked for 30 years. And when he ended up in the hospital with his blood oxygen level in the 70s, needing machines to help him breathe, I knew. We all did. But the official bad news came 5 weeks later. I can't stop envisioning the high school track across the street from the house where I grew up. My dad walked laps at night there with his cigar. If my sister and I walked over to meet him, we'd know where he was based on the glowing red ember bobbing in the dark. This seems normal to us then. A middle-aged man power walking, sneakers tied, sweatpants, t-shirt, and sweatband around his forehead, puffing away at a cigar the whole time he was getting his cardio in. We bought him cigars for his birthday and Christmas and Father's Day. And now my dad will never walk me down the aisle. My future kids won't know him, won't hear his jokes, won't get his advice, won't get McDonald's and ice cream on the sly when their helicopter health nut mom is away. Mom sends me a picture of dad to show me how good he looks, how he's doing fine. I see my grandparents' faces in his. We were supposed to go on a family vacation. We started planning, we started saving money. Now I'm selling my belongings, making arrangements to work remotely, receiving reminders to cherish every moment. I'm asking people for their advice, and then upon receiving it, wanting to scream, fuck you and your goddamn fucking advice, you cancer-free assholes. And all I can think about is how badly I want to tell my Tinder dates, past and present, my ex-lovers who couldn't properly love me back, my ex-lovers who I couldn't properly love back, my friends who are no longer my friends, anyone who has ever done me wrong, my acquaintances, my colleagues, my well-meaning friends who have done nothing to hurt me, and even my good friends who I called to sob to and who listened to me and were kind and wonderful, just everyone, even my dog. No, not my dog, actually, but everyone else, even the people I truly, deeply love, and even myself, to please fuck off. So maybe that's step one. Thank you. Writing this collection was extraordinarily helpful. Being able to express the inexpressible. Being able to write down what you couldn't say out loud. And that was just the beginning of this collection. There are many more months that are outlined. And throughout the longer pieces of the memoir in verse, I have my shorter pieces. I'm going to share with you one of them that Jesse mentioned, Eta Ursa Majoris. I felt him transition from relative to ancestor into the breath he lost, present as he became older than the hunter's myth, older than the deities who created them. Now he follows the path of Alkaid while embodying its light, his light. When I search the sky, he watches from 4,000 light years and 4,000ths of an inch away. Thank you. All right. I'm going to read another short piece. This one is one of my favorite pieces. I mean, I like all the poems I write. If the ones I am trying to submit for publication, I have to like them in some capacity to want people to read them. This piece was born after his funeral. It's called Gravestone Flowers. I paced my father's hometown cemetery as he pushed and pulled his lawnmower through the overgrown grass, planted marigolds at strangers' graves. I ripped dandelions with the ferocity of a child who was Anne with an E and who pretended to be the one from Green Gables, who didn't care to understand what it meant to be dead. I held the bouquet like a bride and trampled the wild blades, wondering why my dad cared at all to tend the plots of those decaying for a century. Now, with a longer life of collected memories, I know he'd always been the man to shovel his neighbor's driveway in December, to walk at night with light bulbs in his pockets to replace anyone's burned out porch lamps while they slept. And he couldn't let his parents' bones lie in a graveyard replete with Jumanji canopies, taking over the signs that someone once inhaled this town, that someone once exhaled this town. Now I adorn my father's grave with seashells, arrange them in a circle around a ceramic frog. I carry his funeral flowers like a baby in my arms, lay one at a time across barren graves near his. And maybe visiting strangers will be touched to see a lily, even desiccated from the sun, atop their loved one's grave. Maybe this was my father's sentiment too. Maybe he thought not of those who passed on, but of those who would pass by. They would know someone cared enough. Or maybe they would think it was their ancestors' way of saying hi from the other side. And maybe when you think about it, it was. Thank you. Thank you. The beauty of writing is that you have the opportunity to, one, encapsulate specific moments in your life, like a time capsule. I'll always be able to go back to this poem and read it and remember and be able to remember how my dad did care for his parents' graveyard. He ended up being this volunteer caretaker. He ended up buying a riding lawnmower in order to care for this graveyard, just to have this age-old cemetery not be replete with grass and weeds and overgrown, that would actually have paths for people to be able to visit their loved ones. And he did plant flowers at strangers' graves, ones that didn't have any. And now when I visit his grave and I bring my own flowers, I always leave flowers around his, flowers for the other people passing by to see flowers at their ancestors' graves. And I hope that they feel touched. I hope they feel something. Okay, Jesse, how much time do I have?
You have another 10 minutes.
Great, thank you. I'm going to fast forward through my collection and read one of the last sections of memoir in verse, and then I'm going to finish out with 2 shorter poems. This is called 2 Years Later. In the aftermath of my dad's death, I wrote the final step to surviving tragedy was chaotically repeat the steps. But I was incorrect. That is not the end. I wrote that final step 2 weeks after my father died. The newly acute pain blocked any imagination of feeling anything other than slashed, like a century-old tarp weathering a hurricane. I couldn't imagine a life in which I could think about my dad and not have an emotional meltdown. Even though I was told by those who have gone through this journey before me that the pain would become more bearable, I didn't believe them. I thought I was different. My relationship with my father was different. I would carry this pain forever. And I am. I still carry this pain. I am crying as I write these words, and I think about how I have not spoken to him, hugged him, or heard him laugh in 2 years. And it will only be long. And longer still, 3 years, 4, 10 years, 20. But it's a soft cry, a pillow rather than a wrecking ball. The pain is manageable, livable even. Before and after my father passed away, my mind fixated on W.S. Merwin's poem, Separation. Everything I did was stitched with the color of my father's death. I couldn't see or feel anything other than loss. And I didn't want to. I was not open to a life of healing, of love. I was not open to laughter or forward movement or joy. Being anything other than a breathing corpse felt like a betrayal to my father's life, like I was hiding my pain, or worse, not feeling pain at all. But with time and therapy and poetry, the pain now lives woven in a tapestry of other emotions. It is no longer the only thread. My world is now stitched in variegated tones. I've lived to see the other side of step 8, even though I did not realize when I wrote the steps that there'd ever be a new chapter in my life beyond them. The end of Grief Road, I've discovered, is not just chaotically repeating steps 1 through 8. I traveled on that circuit for months, maybe longer, and sometimes it feels as though I'm still on that circuit, but I think I have found an exit ramp, even if it's only a temporary reprieve. The end of Grief Road is healing. It seems intuitive, but in fact, it is not. While I existed in the eye of grief, I never thought I would describe myself as healed. And I suppose I still don't, because healed sounds so finite. It makes it sound as if there is a finish line after which you can say, all right, I have traveled this distance, I am therefore healed. I can say instead that I am more healed, and that I will continue to be more and more healed as my life continues. More healed so that I can be open to happiness again, more healed so that I could possibly endure pain again. The mind has to do what it needs to survive after all, and I was not surviving in the state of grief I was in after my dad died. I was falling closer and closer to a life not worth living. So I am out of the eye. I am more healed. I can remember loss without telling people to fuck off. I can be grateful without needing to cling to gratitude. I can accept help while not being helpless. And I can soberly feel my emotions without fighting for sobriety. I can endure others' egos more easily and check my own. I no longer need to grasp onto control as a distraction from my helplessness. I can remember without falling apart. But I was right that I'm not alone in the confusion, and I haven't been. Although Bert didn't turn out to be one of the ones by my side. We didn't get married, not even later on. Instead, we returned to Wyoming and moved into a 1-bedroom apartment and struggled a lot. I struggled to find any glimmers of hope through my grief. I struggled to work. I struggled to exercise. I struggled to be a partner. I struggled to be a friend. I struggled to be a human being. It was hard to laugh, to be intimate, to brush my teeth, to sleep, to be loving, to be present, to be. With time and lots of therapy, I started to emerge from the dark infinity that was so easy to succumb to. There began to be days when I did not crumble into shredded paper when I thought about my dad or talked about him or looked at his picture. But as I healed, my relationship did not improve. That's not to say it was bad. It was never bad. But even from the beginning, my relationship with Bert only worked when I was in crisis. When we tried dating the first time, we didn't click. We were missing that je ne sais quoi that tells you you're a match with someone. I pulled away and he kept going, which made me pull away even more. Then when my dad was diagnosed, he was there for me, really there. He drove me and my dog across the country. He flew back and forth from Florida to Wyoming to be with me. He was willing to marry me within months of knowing me so my dad could walk me down the aisle before he died. He held my hand as I walked behind my dad's casket. He held me even as I heaved from my sobs. But with time, as I started to heal, when I was no longer in crisis and I didn't need Bert to carry me anymore, our dynamic shifted back to what it was before my dad was diagnosed. The same truths held true. We didn't click. We didn't have the same or even similar senses of humor, values, interests, or dreams. We didn't find the same things fun. I felt like he would dismiss me unless I was having a meltdown. He didn't understand why I kept having meltdowns. We found it difficult to compromise because our wants were polar opposites. We were constantly in lose-lose situations. After spending a year and a half of being not unhappy, but not really happy with both our lives and each other, we decided to go our separate ways when our lease term was up. I was both relieved and bitter. I didn't want to marry the wrong person, but I also didn't want to start over. I was willing to live with good enough because Bert was stable, reliable, put together, and trustworthy. Chores were always 50-50, if not skewed toward him doing more, and Bert loved and took care of my dog. and me. I was okay having a good enough life together. A good enough relationship to me was better than no relationship at all, especially when all of my previous relationships weren't good or good enough in the first place. But good enough was not good enough for Bert. And so we broke up. In hindsight, it is easy to see the relationship wasn't actually good enough. It was just easier to have consistency and security rather than having to embark on the journey of dating again. I didn't want to be 34, wanting kids and having to start over. I probably would not start over with one person right away. There'd be the plethora of Tinder guys who would be perfectly fine, who I'd have to meet first before I met someone who would do all the cooking and dance with me in the kitchen to Bobby Womack, who would make me laugh and do all the vacuuming because I hate the sound of the vacuum, who would kiss my neck and send an electric current through my skin. We'd have to meet each other's families, have our first fight, to move in together, decorate, learn the ins and outs of one another's lives, and love those ins and outs, learn each other's imperfections and love those imperfections. We'd have to do each other's laundry and learn each other's love languages, and it all have to be perfect, or at least good, and not just good enough, before we decide we wanted to bring another human into this world together. And it felt impossible to find that person, my person, if it wasn't going to be Bert. But after going through breakup limbo, by early February, the anniversary of my father's death, Bert and I took our rings off and started looking for separate places to live. We still have love for one another, though. No one cheated, no one abused, no, we weren't toxic, we weren't awful to one another. We just weren't great together. So now we're friends. And that's perfectly okay. I am perfectly okay. I've connected with so many other people through loss. I connected more deeply with a friend of mine who also lost her father to cancer a few months after I lost mine, and she found therapy through poetry too. She told me about a poetry publishing program and insisted I apply with her. We both got in, and I have found a new life purpose because of that experience. She did too. She and I bonded over not only our fathers dying, but over finding healing from loss through poetry. I am grateful for our newfound closeness and for the new life I now have as a result of poetry, a life I never imagined. In a way, our dads live on through our poems, and that is healing to me. How does one know when one is more healed? Gloria Steinem said, the final stage of healing is using what happens to you to help other people. That is healing in itself. Now that I have the perspective gained by going through this journey, I can see why so many people reached out to help me in the beginning. They knew from experience what I was going through, and having made it to the more healed side of grief themselves, they were able to use what happened to them to help me. Their help was a manifestation of their own healing. And now it's my turn to help other people. I write about this grief. I speak about this grief. I make art about this grief, and others have reached out to tell me how I've helped them navigate their pain. Receiving these affirmations feels like drinking an elixir, renewing my life force. It gives me new energy to keep going. Being able to find purpose, meaning, and positivity from the worst thing that ever happened in my life lets me know I am surviving now. I'm no longer floating with my chin above water, hoping a great white ends my misery. I wouldn't even say I'm simply treading water. I'm swimming. I'm swimming and enjoying each stroke forward. I didn't think I would ever reach this point, and yet here I am. So if you're struggling with grief and it feels like there is no way out of the abyss, I encourage you to find a community to which you can commit your time and service. For me, that community was found through writing and poetry, but not everyone is a poet or a writer. Whatever your curiosities are, follow them, and then figure out how your curiosities can help other people. It won't make the pain go away, but it might help you feel like your life is worth living, and it might help you find meaning. It might help you feel like you're honoring your loss. It might even, if you're open to it, bring you joy. Step 9, heal through helping others heal. Thank you. Now I'm going to end just with one last one. pardon me. I'm going to end with Halfway, the poem that Jesse mentioned. It's in the shape of a hot air balloon. I knew I'd never see my father again after he died, but I asked him every night he spent in his hospice bed to please haunt me or send me signs from the other side. I didn't realize he was waiting for me on the moon. When I flew there in a hot air balloon one night, he stood smiling, full-bodied, when I opened the hatch. We bounded together, weightless, marveling at our bare feet caked in gray dust. I woke to the sound of my own laughter, grateful I figured out how to meet him halfway. Thank you so much.
Oh, for those that are watching right now on YouTube, if you do follow Anne-Marie Wells Writer, she did post, and I know I saw it, but I can't find it right now, a poem too that is shaped like a cross. And that one I was really impressed by. I like reading that piece as well. So what I'm going to talk about here before I let Brenda and Anne-Marie speak to each other is I want to talk about like how I got to know Anne-Marie Wells in particular. So as I've mentioned many times, and I just mentioned it earlier, like in my introduction today, when I started this event series for My Place Cafe, the first person I had read is Andrew Liu, who was a good friend of mine. In fact, I'm going to hang out with him later on in Whittier tonight for an LACC English Club gathering. And so shortly, sometime after his reading, I was a guest reader for Woodbury University's First Come First Serve, which is advised by Mike Sonskin, but student-led by his students. And one of the students was saying that they were at the time currently interning for Sims Poetry Library. That student's name who already graduated is Joshua Jones, who has read for My Place Cafe as well. And he was, Mike and Josh were saying that they would love to have poets lead some workshops for Sims. So I was like, well, okay, well, I'm gonna plug Andrew in. And then shortly after that, I ended up plugging Olga in, who also read for My Place Cafe like right after Andrew. And that was how Andrew Liu and Olga Murillo got to meet Anne-Marie Wells. They are both impressed by her as well. And I love seeing clips of like her just participating, just being there as a student. And it's like so awesome, you know, just like taking the workshops, you know, like just absorbing it in and stuff like that. So that's how I got to meet Anne-Marie Wells and kind of like interact with her in the digital world. And then sometime after that, like I mentioned earlier in my introduction, at the Sims Book Fair back in November, that's how I met Miss Brenda Baca. Yeah. So, and earlier we were mentioning today, we brought up GT Foster. So he was one of the people that helped World Stage Press is what it is today, working alongside with Param Sims. And he and GT was also involved with the CLI, the Community Literature Initiative, which James Coates has been a part of as well. Who I see a lot through Spectrum. And actually I got to meet him in person last month, the Alegria 10-year anniversary thing. So to kick it off here, for those that are watching this broadcast on YouTube or may stumble across it, and for those that may not know at all, what is CLI?
What is CLI?
Community Literature Initiative is an umbrella organization. First and foremost, it is the Community Literature Initiative Poetry Publishing Program. So that was first started by the founder, Hiram Sims, and he just was noticing that all of these very talented poets across Los Angeles didn't have their work in print anywhere, that they were doing these poetry slams and doing poetry readings, but they didn't see their work in print anywhere. And so he created this course to help them publish their work. And then it has since exploded, and less than 10 years later, now there are classes across the entire country. There's the Sims Sims Library of Poetry associated with the Community Literature Initiative as an arm of the umbrella organization. And then The third arm is the World Stage Press, which is the publishing house associated with CLI. So CLI is so much, and now it's expanding into children's books as well. I think this year, I think we had 8 classes total across the country, and next year they're expecting to have 10 because the demand for this program is so high. It's such a high quality program. It's 2 semesters long. It's a commitment. So the people who are participating, they are committed to following through on all of the lessons, and each lesson is 3 hours long. It's not, fluffy. It's not easy. Of course, there aren't any grades, but you're doing it for yourself to be able to hold your book in your hand by the end of it. And it's such a satisfying experience to have a cohort that you go through with you, Brenda being in my cohort, who are helping you revise your work, strengthen your work, and going through the whole process. It's not easy. And then when you get out the other side and you see each other with your books in your hands, it's like, yes, we did it. We've crossed the finish line. We have this book, we have this work, and it's so satisfying to be able to share it with the world.
So, my favorite part of CLI was meeting a community of poets. And I happened to join CLI it wasn't right when the pandemic hit. It was like several months in, when it was obvious we weren't going anywhere. And so much of, the artistic world was going online, and certainly poets were just hitting Zoom, going on IG, Facebook Lives. And I was really grateful to meet up with a community of people with my Saturday church family. That's what we would call ourselves. It's because it always felt like we were, we all come from different spiritual backgrounds, I think, but we all took that time seriously, and it felt like sacred time with each other.
It was rejuvenating. After every time, I always felt like lifted, and then I always felt motivated and inspired afterward. It really felt spiritual.
Yeah, it was definitely rejuvenating is a great word to put it, because there were times where I'm like, I would drag myself to class because it was early Saturday mornings, early for me. It was 9 to 12 was the schedule, Pacific time. And but yeah, by the end of it, after hearing poetry, studying something in the textbook that was thematic, and then also workshopping people's poems, giving feedback, receiving feedback, having a writing prompt. Every class there was a writing prompt. So the program, I think, helped coach people if we worked it. If you don't work your program, like anything else, you won't necessarily have something to show for it. But if you work the program, you could help build. And I remember struggling initially with the writing prompts, because I was like, I don't want anyone telling me what to write, but I grew to really appreciate it, because I was like, oh dang, this is how we stay inspired, because there are times where you stare at the blank page and you're just like, oh my God, what am I writing? And one of the commitments of CLI is to read every day, write every day. That's kind of like a covenant that people, the community makes with each other. And, there were times definitely where it was a struggle, but like I said, if you work it, at the end of the program, the 10-month program, as Anne Marie said, you can have your manuscript in your hands. And we were gifted during like the culmination, they call it culmination now. At the time, they called it author draft, with a printed proof of our book in our hand. And it was cool because actually Anne Marie and our books were side by side on the shelf. I think I remember sending a picture to you. I was like, check this out, and we're also next to Umbi, who's another CLI alum who's going to be published by World Stage Press, I think in June or July. But in any case, it was surreal to get the finished product. Like, you have your poetry, your writing, your memoir in verse, in your heart, it's coming through, your fingers to the page. And then it goes from manuscript, like you might print it at Office Depot, but then to get it in a bound edition, it talk about motivation. It absolutely motivated me. And certainly the proof changed, I still had to go through another level of editing more than once. But that was okay, because getting that first printed proof, especially as someone who had never published their work in a collection before, I mean, there's just no other feeling like it. It's like, it felt like a huge weight was just lifted off my shoulders. So yeah, CLI is growing. I think they were doing like one-on-one, like singular classes every year up until 2020 when they went virtual. And because of the accessibility, as Anne Marie said, it has totally exploded. And they do have a children's book class. I'm actually finishing my time as the children's book teaching assistant. Cherise Sim, shout out to Cherise, who's an early childhood expert. She was named by PBS as early childhood development expert. She's our teacher for the children's book class. And we're almost finished. We've got some great children's books that will be coming out. Definitely different than poetry, but there's some of us that have written 2, 3, some cases 4 books. So it's exciting to see how CLI is growing. It's changing every year. It can be a daunting process. It's a hard process, but I think that's the writing process and journey can be difficult, but it's been very worthwhile. And I'm grateful to have met you, Anne Marie, in that community, and to get a first peek at your work, to see how you're building it, to see how it's developing over time. And it's just, yeah, it's always an honor to be in connection and community with you.
Thank you. And to speak to what you were just saying, it's not an easy process. First of all, it's a vulnerable process. You're going through workshopping every other week and sharing your work with other people and having them give you feedback about what could be stronger in the piece. And so sometimes for individuals that takes some getting used to, and it takes like a little bit of emotional work if you're not used to receiving any kind of like critical feedback about your poems. But I mean, every community is so supportive and so wonderful and kind that the suggestions you get is only like if you're interested in making it stronger, maybe try this, or it's all suggestions and not like your poem sucks and you better do this, or it's it's not going to be good. But I think speaking to what you were saying about the challenge is what Hiram Sims says often is it's about holding the vision over time. And I think that and maybe Brenda, you have some thoughts on this, that the people that I really see following through with their book and seeing it to fruition, some people are picked up right away by World Stage Press, but they have a limited amount of people that they can sign. They do one book a month, one book launch a month. And so if they're publishing 12 books and there's 140 people in the program, not everybody's going to be picked up right away. And so then the follow-up is either self-publishing or finding another indie publisher to publish with. And that can be a process. And I have found that the people who keep going and the people who are submitting their work to indie presses or they're publishing it independently on their own are the people who have a very clear vision. They have a very clear audience for who they wrote the book for. Like who are the people, who is the community that they want this book to be of service to. For me, it's people who are going through grief. Anybody who's going through the grief process. I found for me, when I was very acutely grieving, that the moments that I felt the most solace and the most rest was when I read the words of other people going through what I was going through. When I read a beautiful poem about loss that put into words what I was feeling, but didn't know how to say on my own. And I want to provide that same service to other people who are also going through loss, that there is yet another resource for people who are experiencing loss. So I feel like my project is bigger than myself. And I know that Adana Moriarty, who published her book Threadbare with Curious Corvid Publishing, I know that she also felt that way. Much of her book was also about her father passing away, but also was somewhat of a memoir, or it was entirely a memoir, not somewhat. It was about her life as a runaway, as a teenager, and about finding her life in Idaho. Yeah, so that was quite a book too. But I know that she had a greater purpose than just wanting to see her words in print. And Brenda, maybe you feel similarly, bringing your not only your book but also your publishing house of Riot of Roses LLC to light. That I feel like there has to be more than just a certain level of vanity of wanting to see your words in print that motivate you. I know that you're trying to serve a greater purpose as well.
Absolutely. And I think that was that was a key question that we were asked when we were in the program, is who is your audience? Define your audience. And full disclosure, as when I was a younger writer, the last thing I was thinking about was my audience. I was navel gazing. I was thinking of myself, and just trying to get the words out. But there is always an audience, a reader, and ultimately, a writer. You don't necessarily, you're not trying to pander to your audience, but you are trying to reach, have that human touch with the reader. And I remember being a young reader, and just being, like thirsty, hungry for a word of encouragement, a laugh, a cry, whatever, a romantic fantasy, whatever the case was, whatever I happened to be reading. But just touching that human element in the reader is, I think, a really special thing. I've grown really motivated since being in the CLI program. Being in that community has, I think, exposed a lot of us to other communities, not just in Southern California, Los Angeles, Orange County, Inland Empire, but like even beyond, So I've appreciated that, because there's so many independent publishers doing spectacular work. Oh, yeah. And I was like, that I have a background in leadership development, organizational development, sales. Currently, my newest gig right now lately has been assistant to a publicist. So like learning now media, like the missing piece of the puzzle. But the publishing, that I think that has always been like an old fantasy dream of mine that I put on the back shelf and was dusty as hell until I put forth my book. And I was like, you know what, I'm of a certain age where I got to the point where I was like, I can't wait anymore. I'm putting this sucker out, and it's been busy, marketing, putting it out there, sharing it, because there is a sense of urgency. And when you see people resonate with your words, like Anne Marie said, when it reaches someone's heart, touches someone's heart, there's a reason bigger than you. And that's, I think, the even more like philosophical, spiritual calling, I think, that a lot of writers might have, and to inspire others, right, to find a home for our words, and as a publisher, to create space, because there's a lot. I remember trying when I was younger to submit and push my work forward and hit wall after wall. And I like to be someone who tears down walls myself, kick down walls, climb over walls, dig under walls, tunnel under, fuck your muro, Trump kind of thing, like, let's get rid of the walls. So for me, establishing the publishing house is specifically for people that have burning stories inside of them that may not be able to find, the right niche market, but yeah, it is a story that's unconventional, a story that it can be edgy, but ultimately beautiful. So yeah, that's my work in a nutshell. And again, my favorite thing about being in community with poets is you all help me stay inspired, and that's the CLI family. you know, Jesse here creating space with my place cafe. It's like, it's so cool to see the different poets and writers and artists that he's bringing in. And yeah, so much happening right now. I think we're experiencing a renaissance, and I'm so glad to be part of this generation for that.
Oh my God, that's what reminds me of like the LA County Fair, for example.
Mhm.
Earlier, we were talking about how like this is the first year ever in my life I've noticed that there's so much like poetry and storytelling at the LA County Fair, and it's so cool to see that happening there. So there's more. So like, let's say after you maybe barfed from riding the roller coasters, maybe you can try to, you know, take a deep breath and then just go and attend a poetry event. I encourage you to like, even like next year, I'm hoping they have more poetry events for next year's fair. I'm totally down to go to that. For sure, for sure. One question I do have for you guys is like your current projects here. So I'm gonna start with Brenda, because yesterday, while she was at the LA County Fair for the Latinx open mic, she interviewed Cindy Placette for her show Friday Fire on IG Live. So can you tell us more about Friday Fire on IG Live?
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad you brought that up. I forgot that I do that too, because there's a lot going on. So I decided to experiment with an Instagram Live because my hope is to develop a podcast or a YouTube channel like you've got here.
Mhm.
You know, so I'm like, okay, baby steps. I'm like, I think I can handle an IG Live, and I really can because, you know, there we go for an hour. Because I get to chat with awesome poets that have, some of them that are published, that have their book, and some of them that are looking for publishers. So it's you know, different unique perspectives. Yesterday I was at the LA County Fair running a little bit late, of course, right? We're in LA, so we run late. Well, I guess that's technically the IE, I'm not sure. In any case, I had scheduled an interview with Cindy Placide, who is a two-time published poet out of Atlanta, Georgia, that I've been connected with on social media. And she has just a spectacular, very touching and powerful story that she shares in her book about grieving the loss of her daughter when she was 2 years old. So, you know, she raises awareness about mental health, loss of child, you know, and also one of her children, her youngest son, is autistic. So like, you know, that kind of human experience she speaks and writes to as an immigrant woman from St. Thomas living in the United States. So I get to hear these and lift up these kinds of stories during the Friday Fire sessions. I'm a very nosy kind of person. I love to ask questions of people. And I'm like, where did that poem come from? Or what were you thinking? You know, like, or where'd you get your start in writing? You know, all kinds of things I like to ask folks. But more than anything, I like passing the mic. Like, I love the mic. You know, I love the mic. I love to, you know, share my poetry, drop some lines in different spaces. And I've been experimenting with that, but I love hearing people's poetry as well. I love people that can take me by the hand and show me another world that I don't necessarily have access to, you know, and for me, that's a commitment that I make, is to share my platform to the best of my ability of other writers, artists, with my piece of the universe, because I think we all have different cross sections of universe, and if we can galvanize our work together, I think we can succeed, you know, make a bigger splash. So that's a little bit about Friday Fire. I host it every Friday, different times. I'm working with schedules of different artists, so I try to accommodate. I don't know if that's a mistake. It's still an experiment, changing the time, but it's been fun and I enjoy it. And for the time being, yeah, people are asking to be on it, which is cool. I'm like, yes, absolutely. So if anyone's interested, hit me up, slide into my DMs, you know, swipe right, and we'll make it happen. Awesome. Yeah, Jesse, gotta have you on. Anne-Marie, you too.
I was just gonna say, Brenda, I haven't been on yet, so I would love to join you. And it's interesting that you're talking about podcasts, because I also was thinking about starting a podcast series of sorts. I have lots of different projects in the works, not just poetry. I have this other memoir. It's not a memoir in verse, it's a memoir in prose, traditionally, memoir about my time traveling through Iceland in 2016. And I've had this book for 5 years now, and it has seen 2 professional editors and a whole lot of no. And so it's time for me to get it out into the world. And so I recently read this beautiful audiobook by Florence Williams. She is a brilliant nonfiction writer. She wrote a book called The Nature Fix. It's all about the science of nature on the brain and our bodies and how we respond. And she travels all over the world to talk to scientists about their research about that. And she recently wrote a book called Heartbreak, after her husband of 25 years divorced her, and she was heartbroken and going through shock. And she took the opportunity to start this project of talking to researchers who study heartbreak and who study the physiological effects of heartbreak and life outcomes for widowers versus people who are divorced versus people who never marry, et cetera, et cetera. And it was so fascinating. And I listened to her as the author read her book, and it really read or listened or sounded like a podcast, because she, in her audiobook, she had the actual recordings of her conversations with these different people. And so it felt very much like a podcast. And I thought to myself, I could do this. Like, I could make a podcast of my book, have it kind of be like a series, but it's me reading my book, but have it be chapter by chapter, would each be an episode of the podcast. But I know nothing about podcasts. So I literally 2 days ago, I secured a scholarship with Capital Storytelling. They're based out of Sacramento, and I'll be starting their podcast 101 workshop on Tuesday. So that'll be a 4-week journey for me. And then I'll utilize whatever skills I learned, Brenda, and we can chat about bringing your podcast to fruition and joining forces in that way. So I hopefully have that in the works coming forward. I've also been working with the Poetry Lab that's based in Long Beach. They're a poetry organization bringing workshops and poetry readings to the masses. And I've been helping them out as an editorial fellow since March, and I'll be with them for a year stint. And other than that, I'm hanging out here in Washington, D.C. I've been going to open mics at Busboys and Poets, and I'll be doing a variety of different workshops virtually coming up in June. I have one, Finding the Poem in the Pain, that I'll be doing through Poetry Lab, and you can find the information on my Instagram. And then I'll also be doing another one in July about how to find an indie publisher to pitch your manuscript to. And so it'll be a step-by-step guide, taking people through that. And like Jesse mentioned earlier, that I also do copy editing, proofreading. I've been helping out Mama's Kitchen Press. It's a poetry publisher based out of Austin with their manuscript editing. And then I do a variety of freelance contract, proofreading, content editing, et cetera, et cetera. So also here to help people edit whatever you got. If you have academic, scientific, technical writing, if you have poetry, or if you have newsletters, or if you just need any kind of proofreading help, then I'm available for that as well.
One question I want to ask you to talk about is, so I watched one of your podcast interviews where you were a guest, and that show was the Poet Speaks podcast. You know who hosts that, right? So
yes, my friend Amanda Eke.
Yeah, so I read on Instagram recently that you're going to be doing a couple of podcasts, similar projects with her through Poetry Lab, and that's very exciting. And I got to speak to Amanda Eck after your interview, and she's an amazing person herself. I love her podcast. And I'm actually so excited that, so one of the poets I had as a feature here last year, his name is Moli Malfatu, ended up becoming a guest himself, like recently on her show. So that made me very, very happy that I was able to bring, different people from different parts of life together in different parts of the world. And it was exciting. So, yeah.
The Poetry Lab is going to be collaborating with her. We have a meeting actually tonight to discuss more involvement. But I interviewed her for an article that I'll be bringing forth probably in the beginning of July. But it's going to be a series of articles that feature podcasts that are specifically poetry based. So it's going to try to bring to light some of maybe the lesser known poetry podcasts and just like talk about them, introduce the people behind them, and kind of give them a plug and get people listening.
Wonderful. There's another podcast out there called Shows at What Podcast that My Place Cafe has partnered with last year. So if you're looking for more podcasts, I would say to reach out to them. The guy that hosts it, his name is Peter Rio. He writes prose and poetry. He interviews all kinds of writers, whether it's poets, novelists, memoir writers. Like his shows are amazing.
Cool, awesome.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, send me a message. Send me a DM.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, something's vibrating. Oh,
Is
that's
it my
you.
phone?
Oh, because I thought that was my laptop.
My phone's sitting over here
Yeah.
shaking.
For sure.
Scaring Jesse, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I want to say that this has been very great that you guys have been talking about like all the amazing things you guys have done and just talking to each other, having this like, pseudo like just intimate conversation with one another publicly on YouTube. I find it very exciting. I love doing stuff like this. I love that this actually worked out the way that I envisioned it. Like I was telling Brenda earlier, like the reason I had it like not as structured because I want to see how this will work out. And I can't wait to rewatch this because this is gonna be exciting. I mean, it is exciting, and I just brings me different to the writing community and to show others like what writers do beyond just writing for the page or for the performance and whatnot. So with that, we're gonna end our event here. Thank you to you two for being here and making this My Place Cafe event a reality. You can find Anne-Marie Wells writer. That is her IG right there, right in front of her. If you've seen throughout the broadcast. And then Brenda Vaca's IG is I am Brenda Vaca. So happening right now after this is Spectrum Publishing. So you can, if you go to their Facebook, they're gonna do a live stream. And today's episode of Spectrum Publishing is 4 features, 2 micro release parties for the sister press called Four Feathers Press. So the first release party is for their book called The Poetry Lottery 2. This special edition book, the money will be, half of the money will go towards Radomir Luza, who has been hospitalized for quite some time. And he's also an amazing poet himself. The other micro release party is Scenes of Southern California, Volume 2, Poetry of Places. I'm in that, so I'll be reading my piece out of there. And then right after, if time permits, there will be an open mic. So if you want to tune in for more poetry, go to Spectrum Publishing on Facebook. And also here live as well, we're gonna have the event actually at the Zen Den today. And yeah, so we have a lot of exciting things going on here at Hensteve Square. Thank you to all